here ready?
We're ready.
We are ready. All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Operations and Planning Committee meeting to order. And do we have any public comments or anybody from the public wish to speak? And I want to welcome our millions of viewers. Get practice there. Presentation and discussion items. Number one, update on current projects, Chris.
Right, I know you just got a large printout copy of these tables, but it was sent out in the packet, so there's none to touch on specifically at this time. Give you a chance to read over it and ask any questions you have about anything in particular.
Is this the same that was sent out the other day? I think it was sent out yesterday or?
It is, it's the same as the one that was sent out on the agenda.
Scott, y'all got any questions? All right, very good. We'll move on to the update on the dewatering project.
All right, for this, I'm gonna call Steve Barbian with KCI, and he's gonna give us an update as to where we are with it.
Okay.
This is Steve.
Hey Steve, it's Chris Eliezer. I've got you on speakerphone in our committee meeting right now.
Okay.
So I appreciate you taking the time to give us an update as to where we are. And so just as a reminder to everybody here, this is the one that was mentioned at our last board meeting that we're doing the CMAR with the dewatering project. So now we're working in the value engineering portion and we've had about 3 weeks since then to make considerations. So Steve will be discussing that and providing an update as to where that is right now.
The dreaded initials VE.
Yes. All right, it's all yours, Steve.
All right. So, as I think you guys are aware, the dewatering project is one of 3 projects in your all SCIP grants that $9.6 million of grant funding. And so the budget set aside for the dewatering projects to find a replacement for the 2 belt presses was about $2.8 million. We got through our 30% design at KCI and gave it to Harper, and they came up with the pricing with doing two new screw presses, a conveyor system out to 2 truck loading bays with conveyors to distribute the sludge across the 2 trucks, and that, as well as doing some demo work and cleanup work and other site work associated with it. That budget was about $5.3 million. So we're well over budget on the original 30% VE, or sorry, 30% cost from Harper. And so obviously that's over budget. Project can't move forward like that. The benefit of doing the CMAR and having a contractor on board and getting pricing as we work through design at the same time is we can identify, okay, how can we tweak the design? How can we change the design to get it down under budget? So we've been working, back and forth on a seemingly daily basis with Harper, and we've changed where the truck loading is going to be. We shrunk it down from 2 truck loading spots to 1 truck loading spot. Moved it from the east side of the building to the alley between the what's going to be the dewatering building and the aeration basins, which cuts down on a lot of the site work, storm drainage reroute, a number of other things. And so right now our budget's at about 3.4 million. So we've made quite a bit of headway on the design. We're obviously not quite to that 2.8 number yet. We got another 600,000 to cut. But I think we're still progressing in the right direction and getting very close to being within the budget there. And so we're going to continue to work with Harper as we move forward. You know, really try and get that number down to 2.8, and have the best use of this grant funding that we can for becoming children. Some other ideas on the table are going to be if we change from screw presses to a centrifuge, kind of revisit some of the equipment selection, trim down where the conveyor loads, you know, change the alignment of the presses in the building. We've got a couple more ideas we're going to chase down and get updated pricing from the vendors, and really try and get that number down to the 2.8 number. My thought is obviously this is grant funding. This is a great project and a real need for the wastewater plant. And so, you know, I think we'll do the best we can to use the grant money that you're being given, that you've been awarded, to do the best upgrade that we can for the equipment. And then I guess one other thing that I'll mention on this is the pump station that's been completed came in under budget slightly, so there'll be a little bit more budget from that. And then the project that WK Dixon is doing is out to bid right now, and that's the rehab of some of the collection system lines. And so once we get those bid numbers back, then we'll have a really good number of, hey, this is our final budget, this is what we have to work with, whether that's 2.8 or whether that, you know, can creep up to 2.9, you know, somewhere in that region. But I think working with Harper, we're able to see the benefit of going CMAR with this, where we can value engineer the project and get the best use of the grant dollars that we can. Any questions through that?
What are the other projects, Chris?
The one he mentioned about WK Dixon is primarily a cured in place pipe, trenchless rehabilitation. There's a number of point repairs associated with it as well, but it's on the trunk sewer that serves the lower portion of the city of Westminster.
Yep.
And the other one was the replacement of the Flat Rock pump station, which is in operation, and we've received a partial permit to operate on that. I believe we're just in punch list. And you weren't working on that one, that was Garrett, but is that still what you understand? If you even know, Steve, that one will be closed out fairly soon?
I think we just wrapped up record drawings for it, so I think we should be getting the final permit to operate here, you know, getting that letter and application in here shortly. Garrett's working on that, so I'm not gonna say that's, you know, fully factual, but that's my understanding.
All right.
Steve, is there any savings on the Flat Rock project?
Yes, that one came in under budget. I don't have the exact number in front of me. Chris, I
Okay,
don't know if you know that off the top of your head.
I do. The budget for that one was about 1.7 million, and I think it came in around 1.3, 1.35, I think, after the most recent change order associated with that one. But the matter with that is that when we knew that this was coming in under budget, we were gonna have a couple $100,000,
right.
that we went ahead and mentioned that to Dixon, that there was gonna be savings because the dewatering project was behind. So we didn't realize at that time that we told Dixon that there was gonna be additional money, that we may need it for this one too. So I believe if Steve hadn't already, he was gonna contact Joe Swain with WK Dixon and speak to them
Work that
and
out.
figure out, you know, where they believe it, you know, is gonna come in. I think they've got a base bid estimate for that project and then a number of options as well with it, to be able to work up to an amount so that we can maximize the grant monies that we had been allocated.
Well,
Have you spoken with Joe yet, or was Tom gonna do that?
No, I left him a voicemail probably yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
I haven't called him back yet.
Okay,
And so I guess my approach would be, you know, the WK Dixon's sewer rehab project is being bid, it's out to bid currently, so we'll get bids in about a month on that. And as we continue to work with Harper and get some, you know, the last of the VE options together, I think we'll have a good, you know, Harper's number is a guaranteed maximum price. So that's the top end for the budget of, you know, we'll have that 60% number from Harper by that point. Plus, you know, we'll have actual hard numbers on Dixon sewer rehab project. At that point, we can look and see, you know, make sure that we've got the best use of funds across both projects at that point.
Steve, on your original estimate, the SCIP funds had a pretty large contingency line item. Is that still part of the process?
I don't know the answer to that one. I'd have to look back at the SCIP application.
Okay.
I don't know if that contingency has been pulled into any of the projects yet. That might be another option.
well, I think that it has. I think those budgets that we developed included the contingency in there.
Yeah, the initial. I know that if, on those funds too, and I talked to Bonnie about this, it's been a few days. You know, if a project within the SCIP funds, if there's 2 or 3 or 4 projects, whatever, if a couple, one comes in low, those funds, they wouldn't, you know, they would allow that to, any savings in one could be rolled to another one.
And that's the good thing we have with ours is we were awarded one grant. We didn't,
Right.
that, you know, where we, and it was done intentionally that way, from my understanding,
Yeah.
that allowed us to be able to shift funds from one to the other without necessarily even having to go and have authorization to do so if there was savings in it. So we've been able to work seamlessly. That's why I mentioned that WK Dixon and KCI have been in the past in communication with each other and will be now to figure out where they think this additional will come in, to see if there's gonna be any money extra from the rehab project that could be put to this.
Very good.
Yeah, and one other avenue that I'll mention that we're staying on top of is, in conversations with the RIA, there might be additional funds come available if projects, you know, aren't staying on schedule, or, you know, someone else's project comes in under budget. And so there is a marginal opportunity to get an additional close to 400,000 up to the 10 million if someone else's project, you know, comes in under budget, or, you know, money gets deallocated from somebody, you know, that they're not able to use their money. It doesn't seem like that's a likely option, but if it does become an option, we want to stay on top of it and have our name on the list. So we're chasing that avenue as well.
And that would also require a $100,000 match from us for that 25% match requirement. So that's $500,000 total if we're able to do it and it's necessary.
Yep.
Very good. Scott, y'all got anything? Yes.
Well, that's it. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, not a problem.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
If you hear anything from Joe, let me know what he says. I'm curious to see
Okay.
if there's going to be any potential savings on that project that could be used for yours.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again, and thank Tom for me.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right, thanks, bye.
Later.
Very good. You have anything else on that to add?
I don't. I think we'll know this time next month. Well, I don't even know that we'll know this time next month. It'll be a few days after this time next month because the bid opening, I believe, on the rehab project, if I remember the date correctly, is the 24th of September. And we meet just before then on the 18th. We have a pre-bid meeting on that project tomorrow.
Good. That's good to get that. I know you'd be excited about having that one done. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to action items to recommend to the board. So the first one is to authorize execution of the contract, W.K. Dixon. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, this is necessary to wrap up the project as well as to close out the grant. So RIA had requested that we extend that grant contract to November 30th, 2024 to allow for all actions to be completed. No change in cost or anything else associated with it. It's just simply an extension. So since the board approved this, the contract initially, it was determined that best practice would be here to have the board authorize that, but I want to bring it before committee to have a recommendation to do so at the coming board meeting.
Yeah, I read through that. I don't know if y'all had a chance to, but it seemed very administrative in nature, these things. So do I hear a motion?
Second.
Second, motion, second. Any other comments? All right, all four say aye. Aye. Okay, it passed. All right, thank you. Let's move on to number 2. Consider a contract amendment to W.K. Dixon to continue assisting OJRSA with matters related to the regional feasibility study. All right, go ahead with that, Chris.
All right, again, this is attached to the agenda as well, but what this would be is to have W.K. Dixon and Angie and that team to assist us with any work that may be necessary on our part, provide advice and guidance to the board, to the committees, to staff as necessary for work associated with that implementation of it. Again, that was a $100,000 award for the initial contract, so this will be an amendment to it. This one will be for an amount not to exceed $35,000 for time, materials, labor. So based on what we utilize will be what we would pay for it.
All right, do I hear a motion on that one?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion items on that one, any thoughts? Good. All right, all four say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so that passes as well. All right, third item here is consider proposed updates to the sewer use regulation regarding fats, oils, and grease, and other such matters.
Okay, and this is the big document that's gonna be in your packet here today. So what I've done is the first 3 pages reference specific points in the document. There's a few general tabs that apply to the whole document that you'll see within that table. But what I did in the draft that we put together is if you look on the very left-hand side of the page, you'll see a lot of numbers, and I've gone and turned on the line numeration option in Word to automatically apply it, created this table to make it easier to find what we have identified that staff have recommended for changes, and this was done also with the assistance of Paul Lewis and Sonia Harrison with Goldie. So, and of course, obviously this is done in response to the direction that was given by the board for us to make some considerations initially for the fog portion of it. And with that, even it was more specific to just the clean out time requirements for the trap. But we figure if we're gonna open the regulation back up, it's no additional time or, you know, not much in the way of additional work. Go ahead and add in there some more items that we've since found probably should be added. So there'll be the you know, primary one will be the inclusion by specific call out to the hydromechanical fog device, along with the traps and interceptors that were already specifically stated in the regulation. So that we'll be able to do away with having to grant variances for those, and they would just be allowed as if being the same as we do currently with the trap and interceptor.
I like those line items. I was starting to go down through there, and then, you know, everything else started creeping up on me, so I didn't get a chance to finish it.
Well, I think the easiest book in the world to find anything in is the Bible.
Right.
It is so easy to cite
Book,
chapter, verse.
Right.
And I think this is the second easiest way to go about doing it. So the plan with this is to have, and you can see behind me, I've got Allison McCullough and Dalton Justice in here to be able to address any questions that you guys may have that I may not.
Are they on camera right now, by the way?
I'm hiding behind.
So we'll go through here. If discussion takes place here, it gets recommended that we take this before the full board for consideration, since we, you know, not had members of the public that didn't show up at the last meeting upon invitation. I will take this, disseminate it out, let them know what is being recommended, and we'll go from there. Again, the board initially does not have the authority to approve this, with it being a change to the regulation. It's gonna have to go before legal review, it's gonna have to go before DHEC review, it's gonna have to go out for public notice, you know, ultimately again, out for board final approval after it, you know, proceeds through those formal steps.
This is the basic beginning of that
Yes, sir.
laborious project.
It is, and there's already an item that we're going, that is not included here, but we just did not receive it in time to be able to add it to it, so it's already gonna have an inclusion in the next recommended version for the definition of a waste stream. When I got looking through it, and as you do the same, you'll see there's numerous references in the document referring to waste stream, one word. Yet there's no corresponding definition as to what that is. So for clarification's sake, I feel we probably should go ahead and add a formal definition to the regulation.
You know, and another thing, May will do it, so I really did like that lines. I thought that was pretty cool. And I've seen that before in Word documents. But at the top, you know how we've got it highlighted as a draft, you know, OP committee, just do the same highlight throughout on these things. That's something to where you can just kind of flip through and see something with a yellow highlight in it.
For what has changed?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, sir, and that could be done. The interesting thing with this is that it's not the one that shows the markups. So that, I can provide that as well. The actual version we have should be the red line version of it. And that's what corresponds to these line items here. So when it's saved as a PDF, it must not have saved the
It probably, yeah, because this is.
red line.
This is
as well.
what we got, is what we started going through.
Mhm. And you'll notice then that if you did, then the lines may not match up with it.
They were matching up pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't see any lines that weren't matching up.
So I'll provide that, that, you know, it should have been, because it does specifically state that we did use red line or markup text.
Right.
So that can be done, but, so when, you know, either the red line or the highlight or whatever it will be, is You know, if something's been removed, I guess we can show it as a strike through and highlight it, but if not, then you just won't see it.
Yeah.
In here.
And that's cool. Do you need anything from us on that, do any kind of action?
I think that we will, just the general approval to take this before the board for consideration. And once I have approval here, then I could disseminate it to the cities, to the administrators as well,
Okay.
to forward out to any key members of the public that they may think that would have a vested interest in it for their
Get the
review and
input.
input.
Yep. All right, well, very good. Do I hear a motion on that one then? No, have a motion, second, very good. Any other discussion? All right, all four say aye. Aye. Okay. So we got that one on, that's what you're looking for, Chris?
Yes.
All right, well, very good. We'll move on to the executive director's discussion and compliance concerns. And all these will be back on you, Chris.
All right, the first item there is that since we have met in July, we have identified 2 final clarifiers that we have issues with. One of them has been a long-standing concern or problem that we've had with the floor of the clarifier, final clarifier number 1 has buckled, the concrete has eroded and is crumbling. So it has caused us some mechanical damage as the rake arm has gotten hung up once some of the aggregate has been pulled out or the broken concrete, and has caused again some minor equipment damage, nothing that couldn't be repaired. But final clarifier number 3 is at the point where it needs to be to have a full overhaul. So back prior to my coming on board, I think it was around 2015 or so, that Mr. Winchester had 2 clarifiers rebuilt. He had one final clarifier as well as one primary, and then not long after I started, we did the other ones, the other 2, and those are from the original plan. But clarifier number 3, which was part of the addition when the plant was added on to in the 90s, that when it now is at the point where it needs to be rebuilt too. So we've got a cost estimate to rebuild that in the neighborhood of $400,000, and we're waiting on an estimate as to what it's going to take to make those repairs on final number 1. But these aren't going to be items that are added in the current year's budget. In fact, the rebuild for clarifier number 3 is in our CIP that was presented to the board back in 2021. I think it was approved at that time, but we're approaching the point where we need to do something with those. The GIS data request, which is item number 2, this is something that was sent out, and I'll go ahead and just pass out a copy now just as a reminder. I printed it off before the meeting, and it's just a request from the city. So we have had the county, for most of my time here, has been gracious enough to oversee and implement and manage our GIS system. But we are now, because I'm in the process of putting more demands on that system, and we need to bring that more as a managed in-house. And when I say managed in-house, it's going to be overseen with a consultant that is going to be doing that for us. We don't have the staff nor expertise to do it, but we're adding easement documents and easement layers within there so that we can easily pull these up upon request instead of having to go and dig through the files. I've got the goal of adding permits to this so that we'd be able to click on any parcel and see if they've been permitted with us, and if so, in what capacity. But in that too, we need to have an idea about what the city's systems are as well. But also, we still have the goal of being able to do a full system hydraulic model, which requires that depth component as well as the rim elevations. And I don't know that any of the cities currently have that. I don't believe that they do, but that would be necessary for the cities to do a hydraulic model on their system. So if you have it, that's great. This identifies the format and the items that are being requested for that build. And if there's any questions about that, just let me know. And also, I think that it states provided to us by August 30th, and there's a format, preferred format, as well as delivery options to be able to get it to us, because the file size may be, probably likely it's too large to be sent by email.
Yeah, I went over this with our guys, I was going like, dang, it's the good information I have.
Yeah, there's a lot of laughing going on, because, I mean, we've got locations, that's about it. We may have some inverse, but as far as services, anybody's gonna have that.
We're, I would say we'd have probably less than 10% of our inverts when you say it's.
Yeah, we don't have them all, we have some.
Yeah, it's just very spotty.
And I think that, it states in there too, just to let us know what you don't have. as
Yes,
well.
it's, when it will be available. I don't think I can give you a date on that.
Yeah, well, I think really, this ultimately, I think is gonna be part of that whole CMOM thing that's being worked on with the cities too, regarding the mapping of the system. So that, fall within that realm, but this is just, we're just trying to get this with whatever you have up to date with our current system, because in the past, when Lisa Simmering was there, I think she would maybe a couple times a year, would send a request to each of the cities to provide an update. So it's been a number of years since we had received anything from it, so we figure while we're doing this brand new build, which is gonna be from the ground up, that we'll go ahead and get as much up-to-date information as we can. We've also, with any new developments, we also put that requirement in there for them to provide this information to us. And in the case where it's something that's gonna be an asset that we own, we've already done this now, that they have to provide all of this information and it be verified by the consultant before we will issue them a letter to submit to DHEC to receive the permit to operate for it. So all these, and you see this in the
Basically getting your
development.
as-bills in.
Get as-built, get all the electronic information, and it all be verified that it meets our minimum requirements as stated in the development policy for all of this, so we don't have to go and build it after the fact. They're providing it to us up front at their cost. So that may be something that the cities want to require as well when they state that they're going to allow for subdivisions or line extensions of any type. Put that burden on them, and then just have that verified when they provide it to you before issuing that letter stating that you're that you're willing to own, operate, and maintain what has been constructed.
It's in our letter of conditions that they provide that.
Let's see, item 3, feasibility study items. So this comes from the draft copy of Angie Milton's report that was just delivered and presented at the last board meeting, and that she asked that I mention these as a reminder today, that at the coming board meeting that we'll have, which I think is on September 9th, that it'll be on the agenda for the board to approve the final version of that. Angie is currently working on the final copy of that report based on feedback and comments, if any, that she had received from the cities. I don't know if she had received any or not. I sent her a couple of questions that I had just for clarification purposes within the report on some stuff related to us on the front end of the documents. It was, just to let you know what those were. The way I read it initially was that we were still receiving $600,000 or $610,000 from the county annually every year, which has not been the case. I think the last payment that we had received was
Bill.
around 2013.
Yeah.
Then there was the $1.9 million settlement that came about in 2016, but the bulk of that money was money that was returned to the city. So we, most of that we don't have. It went into our, I think it was our depreciation account. Was that correct, Lynn? I think it went into that fund. I looked it up.
I think so.
So that the depreciation fund was one of the ones that was, substantially returned to the cities back in 2019. The other item that I mentioned, there's a few things within the financial section, but she had in there a graph and a description of cash on hand. And it showed that we had several 100 days of cash on hand. And if you look at our total accounts, that may be true. However, what they took into account, I believe, is the monies that we have that are designated for specifically for growth in the impact fee fund, which cannot be spent on just anything.
Operating.
So they're not really a cash on hand for us to be able to use by law.
By definition.
By definition, they are set aside for a very specific purpose and always have been. And to use them outside of that purpose, it's been advised to us that we could be setting ourselves up for a legal challenge. Thus, they can't be considered for just general cash on hand availability. But what Ms. Stevens does at each of our board meetings, when she puts together that Secretary Treasurer's report, there's a table that's been added to the bottom, or a list that's been added to the bottom that shows where we have, how we are with cash on hand for both of our O&M accounts, which are unrestricted, one being for the wholesale system, the other being for the retail system. Now, once the retail system closes, that project closes out, and we're able to disseminate all the payments to who they need to go to for the construction, as well as return monies to Oconee County, and everything there has been finalized, then, and that's, if you recall, I took this to the board a month or two ago, that it was approved that we're gonna leave $100,000 in that fund, and the remainder of that, which would be in the neighborhood of over $1.4 million after interest, will be returned to the wholesale O&M fund. So that will boost cash on hand within that fund, but we will have very, very little cash on hand in the retail O&M fund, $100,000, give or take. So those are the couple items that really stood out to me. Most of the others, from my standpoint, were fairly small regarding the sewer authority itself. So, when you go back, be thinking about who you might think would be good fits to fit on that ad hoc committee, because once that report's approved, that starts our clock, and I believe we have 45 days to set up the ad hoc committee. So I would imagine that whether it's done at the October board meeting, or we have a special call meeting specifically to discuss and address some of these matters, as we approach day 43, 44, 45, that we, do that, have that lined up. And that's the kind of stuff that it'd be nice to have Ms. Metlin on board for, is, with that additional contract amendment to help us coordinate that and make sure that we're moving forward with that. Plus, you'd be able to dive, to see what's going on and provide comments and feedback to the state as appropriate, since they funded the grant to do the study.
Have you penciled in your own thoughts on who you want on there?
I have some thoughts. I do, but I've
done the same thing. I don't know have you done that, Scott or Scott? Penciled in, because there's like 11 positions.
And I think, one of them specific to the COG, and I'd imagine that would be like Chip Bentley
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
That
was kind of
the first 5, I think, that are stated in there city specific, then the second 5 are not to be city representatives. So those are the ones that I've been thinking of. The first 5, I should say cities. You got cities, county, and us.
Yep.
Then the other 5 are the ones I've been just thinking of names, potential.
I've got
people that
little
serve.
penciled in names too.
Yeah, and I'll discuss that a little bit further in just a minute. Within 60 days, just, this comes from the next steps as stated in there, so just to be thinking about this as well. Within 60 days of finalizing that report, the satellite sewer systems should develop a 5-year capital improvement plan. And I think she states in there that it didn't have to be put together by an engineer or anything like that, but it needs to be well thought out to have something for each of the cities to begin moving on. And I imagine that each of the cities probably has some idea about the direction they're gonna go with that anyways. But then within 6 months of the end of that time frame, so it'll be no more than 60 days plus 6 months, that there's to begin a detailed financial and rate study by a rate consultant. And then, what I ask is whenever you're putting together the CIP, to go about and consider that Oconee County and Western Anderson County sewer master plan that was put together, and, be thinking about that as well as how, what you're thinking of may impact that plan. Because again, we would encourage all the cities and all the private developers too to consider the impact on that and try to conform with that plan as general guidance. And then I've got one more handout. This is something that Angie sent to me yesterday afternoon, and it is in regards to helping to fund some of these studies for the cities, specifically and she mentioned specifically the rate and fee study is the potential for an RA grant to assist that. Now, she wasn't sure if the city of Seneca would qualify based on population or customers served, but that for certain Walhalla, Westminster, and West Union would. So what I'm passing out here is the email from Angie, as well as the 2 attachments that she put in the email that are referenced within that within the handout.
So I see the 10,000 or less, and that's population, not connections.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's what it says, open to entities serving a population of 10,000 or less.
So what I've done here is I just printed off one per city. So of these handouts, and since Mr. Paris works for the city of Westminster, but he's also representing Walhalla in this case, I'll provide him the copy that goes to the city of Walhalla. And lastly, we are, talking about the CIP back, and I think it was in December of 2021. We presented one to the board adopted it, and it was 7-8 months into our consent order. So at that time, we didn't know what issues we had out of the collection system. We knew we had issues, but not to the extent that we had. We knew we were going to be out there identifying those over the coming years, and we'll continue to identify those over the coming years, even from today, as we continue doing our investigation. But some of those items that are on there, we have checked off that we've been able to do with cash on hand. So over the next month or two, Kyle Lindsay and I will be updating that CIP that was performed, the high level one that we did, and we'll be presenting that at some point and give an update as to where we are on that document or that plan. And then lastly, and what I said a couple of minutes ago that I would come back to is I wanted to mention the passing of Dyke Spencer, who I know several, I know Bob knows him, I don't know. It seems like everybody in this industry had some type of interaction with Dyke over his time at least when he was in the upstate, if not when he was in the lower part of the state, when he was at Beaufort Jasper. And that is a tremendous loss to this industry and to this state. And to me personally, I highly respected Dyke. I sought advice and input from him. I know a number of you had seen Dyke at some of our planning meetings and stakeholder meetings representing the Lake Hartwell Association that he was a member of. But he was just interested and cared and was passionate about what he did. And when I saw that list that Angie put together for that ad hoc committee, for one of those 11 positions, the very first name that came to my mind was Dyke, because I knew, first of all, I knew he would be willing to do it. He was, again, that was his life. And what I said the other day, some people talk about, well, some work right up till their death and they don't get to enjoy retirement. Well, the way I kind of like to think about Dyke, as I've reflected on this over the last several hours since I learned of his passing, is Dyke had the best of retirement because he did what he loved doing and got paid for it. So his hobby was his job, is the way I see it, and he just got the benefit of getting paid to do his hobby. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I did mention and recognize, and I'll always remember him. That's all.
That's it? Well, that was, I was gonna say something about that myself. Dyke was not just a good, in the profession, but a dear friend. So, he's in a better place. All right, any other discussion items you guys want to bring up? All right, we got our upcoming meetings, and our next one is September 18th. Y'all good with that one? I'm good with it. All right, and then we're moving because of Labor Day. I guess that's why we're changing that one to the 9th. I'm gonna do that right now on my calendar. I appreciate you saying something there, really, Chris. I need to change that. So, anything else? And the finance committee got canceled. It's been a good update. That's good, all right. Motion to adjourn,
So,
very good. And now we're gonna be cut off from the rest of the world, the millions of people that are tuned in to watch the excitement.
can we get cries of sadness?
This is almost better than roller derby.
Are we done?
Yes.
Okay.